Welcome to Airgun Extra, brought to you in association with Crackshot, the Southwest's premier airgun centre and ranges. In this week's episode, I'm taking a look at the performance of some hollow point ammo in terms of accuracy, penetration and impact. Before that though, I'm out targeting some rats that have homed in on a slurry pit in search of hydration. Right then, so the clip you have just seen is me making a double on the rooks with the Hikmicro Alpex 4K Lite, and I just wanted to include it just so you could see how great the detail is in the day mode on this scope, even in relatively low light conditions. And you know, on this farm, crows, rooks and jackdaws are causing all sorts of problems, but this evening it's going to be all about the rats. So I'm going to be using the Alpex 4K Lite in complete darkness. So while we're waiting for it to get dark, I will give you a quick run through the kit for tonight's shoot. The gun is my cherished Daystate Huntsman Revere Safari Edition, and some of you will probably know that I rate this gun so highly that I've actually got two. I've got one in 177 calibre and one in 22, and I just find it a really nicely balanced, accurate, easy to use pre-charged air gun. I'm running this one at the moment, so this is the 2.2 model, and I'm running it on JTS dead center pellets, the 16 grain version. Very consistent performance running them through this air gun. It's literally pellet on pellet at 20 meters and still grouping incredibly tight at 30 and even 40 meters. So that's the gun and ammo. The silencer is from Eagle Vision Cam. It's the Helia or Helia model. It's quite a chunky little silencer and it's very, very effective. I've been using it on several guns recently and I've been very, very impressed with it. So I've already mentioned the Hikmicro Alpex 4K Lite digital day and night scope. It is absolutely packed with features. It's got a laser rangefinder and a ballistic calculator. Now, I want to make it more about the shooting than the kit in this video, but if you do want to find out more about this scope's features, have a look at the Scott Country website. One thing I will say though is that I really like its tube design. That 30mm tube makes for really straightforward scope mounting, and it means that I can use my usual sports match scope mounts. And I've actually, because I've been chopping and changing between different guns, I've got them on some sports match converters here, which because I'm using a Picatinny type mount, that just converts it to the dovetail rail on this gun. So that's the kit. We're going to wait for it to get properly dark and for those rats to start moving and hopefully shoot a few. Well, there's our first one, and as you'll hopefully see from the footage, we're looking out over the slurry lagoon. Now the rats on this farm, they're eating all sorts, animal feed, grain, milled grain, and it makes them absolutely parched. And they come to the lagoon obviously to quench that thirst, and it means it can be quite a productive area to shoot. Wow, none of these shots are particularly long shots, but that was an even closer one. And the ballistic calculator gave me an aiming point that was absolutely bang on. And it's very easy to get your hold over and hold under wrong when you're shooting in complete darkness like this. So that ballistic calculator is a feature that I really appreciate. I think I've mentioned before that there are a lot of owls on this farm, and it's one of the reasons why the farmer doesn't poison the rats. He prefers for them to be shot so that the owls aren't suffering from secondary poisoning if they happen to pick up a dead or dying rat that's had poisoned bait. Now, I think one of the reasons that the rats feel quite safe around the edge of this slurry lagoon is because there's quite a lot of cover, and it makes them feel like they're shielded from those owls. And presumably they haven't counted on me being sat here sniping them from this angle. Well, there was another one that thought it was safely sheltered that time in the overhang of the bank, but obviously turned out not to be safe there. I've got to say it has gone very quiet around here now, so I'm going to move in and have a try around the feed store. But I've got to say, you know, we've done decent shooting around the pit here, and the kit has just been absolutely bang on. The Alpex 4K Lite has landed me on absolutely every shot with the ballistic calculator, and yeah, opportunities that have cropped up here, I've been able to fully exploit them. So as I said, I'm going to move. I'm going to let Nikki get going now because it is getting very, very late, but If I do shoot any more in the feed store, we will edit them onto the end. Don't forget to give us a follow on the Airgun Extra Facebook page. We use it to keep you up to date with everything we're up to, plus special offers and competitions. Right, next up, I'm trying out some hollow point pellets to see if they do what it says on the tin. Right, we've got an ammo test this week, and I've been looking at hollow points for a change. Now, my usual advice is to stick with the more typical domed or round head pellets because they tend to be most accurate through most airguns. However, quite a few people have been asking me about hollow point pellets in terms of how they fare when it comes to delivering shock energy at close range. So I thought I'd put a couple to the test, and I've been looking at the H&N Baracuda Hunter Extreme and Bisley Pest Control, both of those in 22 calibre. I've done this pellet testing through my sub 12 foot-pound Daystate Huntsman Revere Safari. Now obviously a pellet's accuracy can vary from gun to gun, so do take my findings only as a guide. So we've done some penetration tests, and very importantly, I think, we've also done the same tests using a high quality domed pellet as a control, just to show you what that ammo would have been capable of. Now my test groups, they've been 5-shot groups, shot from the support of a bench in pretty calm conditions. Right, so let's kick off with that control pellet, and I am going to refer to my notes now just to make sure I get all of the facts and figures correct. So the domed pellet is the H&N Baracuda 15. Now it weighs 15.89 grains in 22 calibre. The ones I've been using are 5.52mm head size, and the Huntsman gets on very well with them. So it's a very consistently produced pellet, clean, tidy looking ammo, and they have a recommended retail price of £7.95 for a tin of 250. So here is what the H&N Baracuda 15 did working from a 30 metre zero. So at 20 metres, they produced a 5-shot group measuring 16mm from centre to centre, and that was striking about 13mm high. At 30 metres, obviously the group was bang on zero, and that was just 18mm from centre to centre. At 40 metres, the group is just 19mm from centre to centre and has dropped about 38mm from that 30 metre zero. So the penetration test, now that's nothing too scientific. I just shot a pellet into a cube of plasticine at 15 meters. And the .22 caliber Baracuda 15 penetrated 38 millimeters, which is about what I'd expected. And if you look at the image showing the pellet that was retrieved from that plasticine, on the right, it didn't actually deform a great deal. Let's move on to the H&N Baracuda Hunter Extreme. So this is another very neatly made pellet from H&N, and this one retails at £9.95 for a tin of 200. I was using 5.52mm head size, and it weighs a fairly hefty 18.52 grains. And looking at its nose, it has clearly been designed with the intention of deforming on impact. Right, somebody's just fired up a chainsaw outside, and hopefully that's not making too much of a noise in the background. So, how did the Hunter Extremes fare when it came to the accuracy? Well, I've got to tell you straight away, I couldn't get a measurable group at 40 meters, and it may simply have been that the Huntsman didn't get on with this particular pellet. That said, also, hollow point ammo isn't really designed for long range precision. So, at 20 meters, the Hunter Extremes were actually pretty good, and the 5-shot group measured just 11 millimeters from center to center and was striking about 10 millimeters high from the 30 meter zero. At 30 meters, the group had really started to open up. Now, obviously, it's on zero, and that group measures 21 millimeters from center to center. As for the H&N Baracuda Hunter Extremes penetration, that was actually very interesting. So it made a 41 millimeter deep channel. So it actually penetrated deeper than the domed pellet. Now, furthermore, it showed some signs of expansion, but nothing obvious. So it didn't really perform quite like I'd expected it to when it comes to delivering that shock energy. So finally, we've got the Bisley pest control. These pellets have been around for a long time, and I actually used to use them a lot in the past. So in .22 caliber, they retail for £10.95 for a tin of 200. They weigh 18.2 grains, 5.5 millimeter head size, and they have a real cup of a sort of dum-dum style head that again has clearly been designed to expand on impact. Again, the Bisley pest control pellets weren't great through the Daystate Huntsman. I couldn't get them to group at 30 meters, so instead I zeroed them at 20 meters where they were still holding a reasonable group. So zeroed at 20 meters, that group at 20 meters measured 13 millimeters from center to center. And I would say that is very acceptable for close range pest control, which is kind of what this pellet's name suggests that it's for. As far as I'm concerned, the Bisley pest control certainly did what it's supposed to do in the penetration test. So it made a wound channel that was just 27 millimeters deep on striking the plasticine, and that suggests some very significant energy transfer on impact. Now, looking at these pellets, also their profile before and after the impact, there's a significant change. It's really opened up, and again, that suggests that this pellet is going to dump a lot of energy when it hits home. So what does this tell us? Well, firstly, as I've already said, the accuracy side of things can vary from gun to gun, so take my findings as a guide, but obviously it's worth experimenting for yourself. The real surprise, I think, was how these pellets compared in terms of penetration and deforming, and I was certainly surprised at how deep the Baracuda Hunter Extreme penetrated and how little it deformed. However, that comes with the caveat that obviously they only struck plasticine, they didn't hit bone. That could cause significant deformation and expansion. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if they expanded quite a lot more were you to run them at higher speeds through an FAC rated airgun. The Bisley pest control wasn't quite as accurate through the Daystate Huntsman. but it really did open up and really did deliver that impact. So I think they could be a great choice, perhaps for farmyard ratting, where you want a real wallop, but don't expect to be tackling targets over significantly long ranges. So the truth is they're all decent pellets and all worth experimenting with. For my money, I think I'm still going to be sticking with domed pellets for the bulk of my shooting for the time being.
The Great British Shooting Show, held on the 13th to the 15th of February 2026 at the NEC Birmingham. Book tickets online at shootingshow.co.uk.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this week, but as ever, we'll be back with more in 2 weeks. Thank you for tuning in, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to Crackshot. You can find a link to their website in the show description. Now, if you're stuck for something to do before we get back, do check out our website, airgunextra.com. There you will find loads of free-to-read articles. There are hunting features, instructional pieces, news and reviews. As I said, we're back again in a fortnight. In the meantime, enjoy your shooting and stay safe.